Imagine yourself living in the year 1400. You're sitting inside your home as the sun slowly sets below the horizon, and then darkness arrives. Not the kind of darkness you experience in a modern city, not the temporary darkness when the electrical power goes out. This is complete darkness, suffocating darkness, absolute darkness. The kind of darkness you would experience deep inside a cave, miles on the ground. Your only option, the only thing standing between you and total blackness, is a small flickering flame. And that flame smells like death itself, not the pleasant scent you'd find in a modern candle shop, not vanilla or lavender or cedar wood. This is the smell of boiled animal fat, rendered cattle grease, the exact same greasy substance you scrape off a roasting pan after cooking meat. That was your light source. That was everyone's light source, every single night for thousands upon thousands of years. Before the invention of electricity, the average working class family in England spent nearly 10% of their entire annual income on candles. 10% of everything they earned just on light. That's more money than they spent on clothing for their entire family, more than they spent on medical care. Because without light after darkness fell, you simply couldn't work, you couldn't read, you couldn't see anything at all. I'm Julian Vane, and this is The Parts That Made Us. This is the complete story of how the world finally learned to see in the dark. This is the history of the candle. Imagine your entire existence, your productivity, your personal safety, your social interactions, your economic opportunities, all governed by a single inflexible rule. When the sun goes down, you must stop everything. That was the reality for virtually every human being who ever lived for hundreds of thousands of years of human history. Fire provided some help. Torches offered limited assistance. Oil lamps worked somewhat better, but all of these light sources were fundamentally unreliable, extremely dangerous, and prohibitively expensive to maintain over extended periods. The candle changed that equation, but it took an extraordinarily long time for it to evolve into what we recognize today. The earliest known candles we have archaeological evidence for come from ancient Egypt, dating back to approximately 3000 BC. But here's the crucial thing to understand. They weren't actually candles in the way we would recognize them today. They were what historians call rushlights. These were simply dried reeds or rushes that had been soaked thoroughly in rendered animal fat. You would hold one end of the rushlight in your hand, light the opposite end on fire, and then either walk around carrying it or prop it carefully against the wall. There was no wick as we understand it, no wax, no decorative holder, just a fat-soaked stick of dried grass material, and a desperate hope that it wouldn't blow out from a stray breeze or sudden movement. The Romans made significant improvements on this primitive technology. They developed actual wick-based candles by rolling papyrus paper tightly and then dipping it repeatedly in either tallow or beeswax. Roman soldiers carried these candles on military campaigns. Roman households used them for domestic lighting. And already a stark class divide was beginning to form around candle quality. Beeswax candles burned remarkably clean. They produced minimal smoke. They emitted a faint, pleasant scent of honey. They were used exclusively in religious temples and in the homes of wealthy Roman citizens. Tallow candles, made from rendered cattle or sheep fat, burned with thick black smoke. They dripped constantly, creating pools of melted fat, and they smelled exactly like you were cooking a very old, very rancid piece of steak. And tallow candles were what almost everyone used for the next 1,000 years of human history. By the Middle Ages, candles had become one of the most economically important industries across all of Europe. This wasn't a small craft business, this was a major industry. Every town of any significant size had multiple chandlers, which was the professional term for candle makers. And there were two distinct types, tallow chandlers and wax chandlers. And these two professional groups absolutely despised each other with a passion that bordered on violence. In London, the Guild of Tallow Chandlers and the Guild of Beeswax Chandlers were locked in an ongoing territorial and economic dispute that lasted for literal centuries. Who had the legal right to sell candles in which neighborhoods? Who possessed the exclusive right to supply which buildings and institutions? Who was permitted to manufacture candles in which parts of the city? Because this was serious business, enormous amounts of money were at stake. Beeswax candles were used exclusively in churches, cathedrals, and aristocratic households. They were powerful symbols of both holiness and wealth. Tallow candles were used by everyone else, the poor, the working class, the vast unwashed majority of medieval European society. But tallow candles had significant problems beyond just the terrible smell. They melted extremely unevenly, they sputtered and sparked unpredictably. They would go out from even a gentle breeze. The wick would gradually bend over time and create what was called a candle snuff, which was essentially a lump of carbon buildup that would dim the flame, fill the entire room with choking smoke, and needed to be trimmed constantly. Trimming the wick was an actual paid occupation. In wealthy households throughout Europe, there was often a servant whose sole job responsibility was to continuously monitor and properly maintain the candles burning throughout the house. And nobody in that era thought this was unusual or wasteful. This was just normal life. Now, let's take a moment to truly understand what tallow candles were actually made from. Tallow is produced by boiling beef or mutton fat, the specific kind of fat that solidifies at room temperature, the greasy, disgusting kind of fat that you skim off the top of a pot of soup and immediately throw away. Now imagine an entire room, an entire house, filled with the burning smell of that substance every single evening, every winter, for your entire life from birth until death. Medieval people weren't particularly bothered by this overwhelming smell. They had grown up with it their entire lives. It was completely normal to them. Much like today, if you grew up in a household with heavy cigarette smokers, you don't notice the smell because you're constantly exposed to it. But historians have documented that wealthy homes lit exclusively by beeswax candles could be identified by scent alone from outside the building. Your nose would tell you, before your eyes could see anything, whether you had arrived at a wealthy house or a poor one. In the 18th century, everything changed, or at least almost everything changed. Commercial whalers made a remarkable discovery. Inside the massive heads of sperm whales, there existed a unique substance called spermaceti. It was a waxy, crystalline oil unlike anything else available at the time. Chemically, it was nothing like tallow. Spermaceti burned significantly cleaner than anything that had come before it. It produced brighter light with almost no detectable smell, no thick smoke, no constant dripping. Spermaceti candles were the first truly high-quality candles available at anything approaching a commercial scale. The whaling industry absolutely exploded in response to this demand. By 1770, American whaling ships alone were producing over 45,000 spermaceti candles annually. The town of New Bedford, Massachusetts became internationally known as the candle capital of the entire world. Enormous fortunes were made. Entire regional economies were built entirely on the harvest of sperm whales. The candles themselves were absolutely extraordinary, assuming you could afford them. They were still quite expensive, still a luxury item, accessible primarily to the wealthy, but they represented something genuinely new in human history. The revolutionary idea that candlelight didn't have to be a miserable, smelly, smoky compromise just to obtain basic illumination. The catastrophic problem was that the whales themselves were being hunted toward extinction at an alarming rate. By the early 1800s, aggressive overhunting had decimated sperm whale populations across the world's oceans. Whaling ships had to travel farther from home ports, stay out at sea for longer voyages, face greater dangers, all for fewer and fewer whales. The spermaceti candle was the first genuinely clean, high-quality candle in human history, and it was already dying, killed by its own success and humanity's inability to harvest resources sustainably. By the way, we've reached the halfway point of our story. If you're finding this history fascinating, take a moment and hit that subscribe button. We release new episodes of The Parts That Made Us every week, and there's much more where this came from. Now let's get back to our story. In 1811, a brilliant French chemist named Michel-Eugène Chevreul made a groundbreaking discovery that would eventually revolutionize the entire candle industry. He figured out a method to chemically separate the various fatty acids present in tallow, and one of those isolated acids, called stearic acid, burned significantly harder, cleaner, and slower than raw tallow ever could. He called this purified substance stearin. Within just 20 years of his discovery, the first commercial stearin candles were being mass-produced in factories across France. No more thick, smoky black drips running down the sides. No more rancid, nauseating smell filling the room. No more constant, tedious wick trimming every few minutes. Stearin candles burned almost exactly like expensive beeswax candles, clean, bright, and long-lasting, but they cost only a small fraction of the price. This made quality lighting accessible to ordinary working people for the first time in human history. And this is the part of the story that history textbooks consistently skip over or ignore entirely. The factories that mass-produced stearin candles in 19th century France were predominantly staffed by women. Working-class women who had previously labored in traditional tallow chandleries, which was brutal, smelly, physically exhausting work, were now operating cleaner, more mechanized production lines. But these weren't just unskilled workers performing repetitive tasks. Many of these women became genuine expert technicians who actively refined and improved the production process. They adjusted chemical ratios, they improved mold designs, they solved manufacturing problems. The modern candle as we know it today, the clean, evenly burning, affordable candle that transformed society, was built largely by the skilled hands of working women whose individual names have been lost to history. In December 1848, one of the greatest scientific minds who ever lived stood in front of an audience of young people in London and said something extraordinary. He declared, "There is no better, there is no more open door by which you can enter into the study of natural philosophy than by considering the physical phenomena of a candle." This was Michael Faraday, the brilliant scientist who discovered the fundamental principles of electromagnetism, and he deliberately chose a simple candle as the subject for his famous lectures. His 6-lecture Christmas series titled The Chemical History of a Candle became one of the most celebrated science lectures in all of history. He methodically walked his audience through combustion chemistry. He explained capillary action in the wick. He demonstrated how the wick actually works at a molecular level. He showed where the visible light actually comes from. Every answer he provided led naturally to another fascinating question. Every question opened into an entire field of scientific study. What Faraday deeply understood, and what most people today still don't appreciate, is that a candle flame is not simple at all. It is actually one of the most complex chemical processes that can be directly observed with the naked human eye. Modern chemical analysis has shown that roughly 1,800 distinct chemical reactions occur simultaneously in a single candle flame. 1,800 separate reactions in the thing that you casually use to set a romantic mood or create a pleasant smell in your home. In 1879, Thomas Edison successfully demonstrated a working incandescent electric light bulb, and within just a single generation, the candle went from absolutely essential survival technology to an afterthought. By 1920, electric lighting had become standard in most American cities and many European urban centers. The candle industry, which had been thousands of years old and central to human civilization, nearly collapsed completely overnight. Factories closed. Chandlers went out of business. The ancient craft seemed destined for extinction. But something strange and unexpected happened. People kept buying candles. Not for practical light anymore, but for something else entirely. For atmosphere, for ritual,
for religious ceremonies, for the way the flame moved, alive and dancing in a way that electric light simply wasn't and could never be. Psychologists have developed a theory about this phenomenon. They call it flame gaze. It describes the way a flickering flame activates the same meditative mental state as watching flowing water or listening to rustling leaves. It's a kind of deep, meditative calm that modern humans were suddenly, desperately missing in their electrified world. The candle industry didn't die with the arrival of electricity. It completely transformed itself. And today, it's a $3.2 billion industry in the United States alone. Think carefully about that statistic for a moment. We have electricity everywhere. We have LED lights. We have computer screens and phone screens that emit more lumens than the sun. And we still voluntarily buy candles. The candle has outlived every single technology that was supposed to replace it. It outlived oil lamps. It outlived gas lighting systems. It survived complete electrification because it was never just a light source. It was always something more. It was a precise marker of time. The upper classes used beeswax candles, carefully measured by the inch, with each inch representing exactly 1 hour. They literally watched time itself burn away in front of them.
It was a powerful symbol of social status. For over 1,000 years, the quality of the candles burning in your home told visitors exactly where you stood in the rigid social hierarchy. It was impossible to hide your class. It was a scientific instrument, a window into chemistry, physics, and the fundamental nature of combustion that one of the greatest minds in history spent 6 detailed lectures carefully unpacking. And it was built, in its modern, democratized, affordable form, largely by the skilled hands of working women whose names we never learned and whose contributions have been almost entirely forgotten. The candle didn't survive simply because nostalgia is powerful. It survived because something deep and primal about an open flame connects us directly to every human being who ever lived throughout all of history. Every person who ever sat in complete darkness and pushed it back with a small flickering light. It wasn't about creating ambiance or atmosphere. It was about survival itself. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Parts That Made Us. If you've got a moment and you enjoyed what you heard, please hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment below with suggestions for another object you'd like us to explore. Next week, we're uncovering the hidden history behind another invention you're probably using right this moment, the surprising history of the chair. Until then, take a look around you. History is everywhere, hiding in the parts that made us who we are.